Detroit, of course, sending Tyler Bertuzzi to Boston earlier this week. Fluto Shinzawa does a great job covering the Boston Bruins, who have lost 8 times in regulation so far this season. So legitimate Stanley Cup contender. Fluto, first of all, thanks for joining this live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. Hope your deadline day has been going well for you.
Quiet, so pretty good.
Yeah,
the Bruins have made all their moves.
Exactly. The Bruins have made a bunch of moves. The Orlov move, and they've done a lot of things that I think have solidified their position into where they are now. When they made the trade for Bertuzzi, there's a lot of people that were like ready to call the shenanigans on Taylor Hall, and this feels like cap circumvention. And isn't it convenient timing that Foligno and Hall are banged up? Could you give our viewers and listeners a little bit of an update, just from an injury standpoint, on Taylor Hall and how that factored into Don Sweeney at the deadline?
Yes, Ian. The Bertuzzi deal was not really on the front burner for the Bruins. They were monitoring the marketplace, but 6 days ago in Vancouver, Taylor Hall goes off the ice. 3 days later in Calgary, Nick Foligno gets checked into the boards by Nikita Zadorov. He limps off. So there's 2 left wings out. And Don Sweeney said yesterday that they might not be back in time for the end of the regular season. So that's okay. We don't know the severity of either injury at this point, and maybe the Bruins don't know either, but they know enough to put Taylor Hall on long term, 10 games, 24 days. So 2 left wings, and then Brad Marchand, he gets a skate cut in Edmonton right above the ankle, and then he hurts his knee last night and leaves the game in the second period. So all this goes to show that it's just so dangerous, right, the NHL, and that things can turn so quickly in terms of injuries. So they can put Taylor Hall on long term, which frees up $6 million in cap space, which allows them to get Tyler Bertuzzi from Detroit. Tyler practiced today for the first time. He's probably going to play tomorrow against the Rangers on the Bruins' third line with Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick. So that's a nice complementary wing that can play power play, can play penalty kill, and who knows if Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno are out for the rest of the regular season, maybe into the playoffs, then what do we always say? That depth matters. And this is another depth piece for the Bruins, just like they added Orlov and Halfway before.
Yeah, and speaking of Orlov, coming in, what is it, 8 points in 4 games? I love the nickname Bobby Orlov. Can you give us a sense of how well is Dmitry Orlov just fit in there into Boston? It just feels like a perfect match right now.
Sensational. He's been absolutely terrific through 4 games, playing left side, playing right side, power play, second power play. He has a real nice one-timer on the power play. He scored one 5-on-5 goal in Calgary right off the faceoff. So he's got some offense there, but he's got some bite. He plays with some edge. He's a good skater, very smart, some real nice vision. Made a really, really high-end play in Edmonton against Connor McDavid of all people. McDavid's coming in off the rush. Orlov stands him up at the blue line, gets the puck, sends it right up to Foligno. Foligno and Coyle go the other way, and they score on an on-man rush. So he gives them a whole lot of options. Look, somebody's going to get hurt in either at the end of the regular season or in the playoffs when it comes to defense, and that's why they brought him in. They have 8 legitimate NHL defensemen now, and they've always had an injury history in the playoffs, like a lot of these teams have done in the playoffs on defense. So he's insurance, but right now he's been second best defenseman after Lindholm after 4 games. He's outstanding pickup.
And hi, Fluto. I'm here now. I don't know if Ian tuned you in, but I was waiting for a coffee.
Priorities, Haley.
Yeah, sorry about that. But I heard everything you guys were talking about. I know that Orlov has been a great fit, and Tyler Bertuzzi almost became a necessity for them due to injury. It sounds like the Bruins are still waiting for an update on Nick Foligno. I guess the question is are the Bruins done? Like, if they hear something today where maybe both guys are going to be on LTIR and that'll open up even more cap space, like, could you see the Bruins doing anything else, or do you think Don Sweeney's done for the day?
He said yesterday, Haley, Don Sweeney said that he's probably done, that they have enough, and that, yes, depending on what kind of clarity they receive on Foligno and Hall, Foligno is still on regular IR. So, yes, I guess there is that possibility. He's making 3.8 AAV. So you could shift that over to long term. and possibly make another deal. But Don said pretty much yesterday that he's done. So I think maybe if there's a depth acquisition out there that makes sense for the Bruins, perhaps they would be listening here in the last few minutes. But I think all business, including David Pastrnak, all family business has been settled for the Bruins.
You know what? I think it's great that you bring up Pastrnak because of all the things that Don Sweeney did at the deadline. Let's be honest, locking up arguably the best right winger in the game, certainly in the conversation of the best right winger in the game on a long-term deal, was the best move that I think he made. Can you walk us through how that all kind of came together and why now and why not earlier in the season? Like, did the Pastrnak camp just wait and kind of get to this point, get a little bit more leverage?
Absolutely, and this was stress out a lot of players, right? To be going into your contract year and not have the deal done, I'm sure there'd be a lot of players come July 1st of that year. They'd be like, "Where's my contract? Where's my pen? Can I sign right now?" David is not like that. If you know him at all, he's very confident in himself. He doesn't take things too seriously. He's kind of a free spirit, and I think that helped him this year in terms of his preparation for this fall. And then once he got started, the momentum kept on going for him. And he said when he went home at night, he'd be thinking about his deal, but overall, he wasn't stressed about the situation. He knows how good of a player he is, how unique of a goal scorer he is, and how critical he is to the franchise, because let's face it, it could be as soon as next year that Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci are gone. Brad Marchand's soon to go after that. He's 34 years old. So David, Charlie McAvoy, they are the two foundational pillars of this team. So Bruins had no choice but to sign and to meet David's price. David was always in control of the negotiations. And Cam Neely said yesterday, the Bruins wish they could have gotten this done a lot sooner. Probably saved them a lot of stress in terms of knowing what that number would be for David and then having a better idea of what their budget will be like for not just next year, but for the next 8 years. But yeah, this was always going to get done. This is going to be a big number. It could have been an even bigger number for David, considering how well he's played and how there's probably still growth left in his game.
I've got one more for you, Fluto. And before I do ask that question, before you came on, Ian and I were discussing a report from Elliot Friedman about JVR to Detroit. It sounds like there's some conflicting reports. Sounds like there's no trade in place at this exact moment in time for James Van Riemsdyk. It looks like the Red Wings are in the process of moving another player to make that happen. So I think there's maybe a couple of technicalities. The trade is not done yet. They're not waiting a trade call. So just wanted to get that out there for everyone listening live as we were talking about the JVR Detroit conversation before Fluto came on. But back to the Bruins and you, Fluto. I think for myself, I've been looking at this Bruins team as the team to beat in the postseason. I think the way I've described them a few times now is they're giving me extreme 2016-17, I believe that's the right year, Golden State Warriors vibes. Just like wire-to-wire dominance, brushing, with like historical numbers. They're going to win the championship, just call it now. But I guess my question for you, Fluto, is what is the biggest roadblock for this team, whether it's a team like Carolina or Tampa, Toronto, New Jersey, or their health and maybe the age of some of these players? Like, is there a concern that some of these guys that you were just talking about, as they're going to be aging next season? Is that a concern heading into the postseason for Boston, or do you think they're just going to be full steam ahead until they win a Stanley Cup here?
No, these are all terrific points, Haley, in terms of the health, right? If three guys go down, then it's a whole different story. And this is a good reminder. Hall and Foligno, that this was within 4 days that those guys go down with long-term injuries. And then Brad gets banged up twice. So it just shows how quickly things can turn. And yes, this has been discussed in terms of managing their older players. This is going to be a grind toward the end. And Bruins don't care about results at this point. They're so far ahead of Toronto, second place in the division, that points don't matter. So yes, they will be resting, especially on back-to-backs with travel. Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, maybe Brad Marchand. So they'll get their breathers. That's probably the biggest concern in terms of just health overall injuries, well-being in terms of some of these older players. They just, let's face it, they just don't bounce back like they used to before. But in terms of opponents, I think there's just one team that's given this team, the Bruins, hiccups, and that's been Carolina. Not just this year, but this is a team that beat them last year in the playoffs. So for whatever reason, speed, physicality, tenaciousness, they've been all over the Bruins, dating back to last year too. So maybe that's the team that scares them. But overall, there's just one team that I've seen that can legitimately say, okay, maybe this keep the Bruins up at night, because they've been such a machine, just so deep. Like, what team has two goalies like Ullmark and Swayman? What team has two number one defensemen like Lindholm and McAvoy? What team has Bergeron and Krejci making $3.5 million total on their cap hit? It's just amazing what this team has done, how the GM has rebuilt this team on the fly, how a first-year coach in Jim Montgomery has come in and expressed even more than what Bruce Cassidy has done. So I don't see any team being able to contend with the Bruins. Obviously, the East is going to be a grind for anybody, but yeah, Bruins are the team to beat.